Hey, once again, this is Brian Bradley from Kingdom Comics. Um, Want to make another video. This video explaining a little bit about who Lord Christopher is. As many as you already know, he is the leading bad guy in all of the Kingdom Comics universe. I want to get into a little bit more about the specifics of his origins, his powers, and what so far we have revealed about him. One of the things that I often tell people, because I'm often asked, is he the Antichrist? The answer to that is no. He is not the Antichrist. He is an Antichrist type character, but he is not the Antichrist per se. And there's a reason for that. For starters, I didn't want to actually put the Antichrist into a comic book because it would kind of then restrict everything else I would do surrounding that. It would restrict the writing, the storytelling, because then I would have a certain set of parameters that I'd have to follow because he'd be the Antichrist. I kind of like to think of Lord Christopher as being the Antichrist on steroids, pretty much. I mean, he's a supervillain. He's got superpowers. He's like, maybe even Doctor Doom meets the Antichrist, that type of deal. But in this video, we're gonna talk about him a little bit and go into a little bit about the details of, as I said, his origins. And without further ado, let's go right into it. Lord Christopher, the Demon Spawn, the False Prophet, World Ruler, Kingdom Comics residential bad guy. A few years ago, I actually put together a little prequel, a little novella called The Anointed Seven Genesis. And in that, I went into detail the actual origin of Lord Christopher. He was born in a very corrupt ancient society thousands of years ago. And he was raised by a sorcerer who, in time, he actually killed the sorcerer, and he took over and he became ruler of this particular uh, nation himself. From there, judgment comes from on high, and God actually strikes down that village, destroys it. However, Lord Christopher is protected, and he remains there and is hidden away for an undetermined amount of time in the mountains. Um, Putting together the timeline, we next see him during the Middle Ages, or at least what appears to be the Middle Ages, where he is leading a group of supernatural dark knights, which Sir Caliburn was included. Then we see him again in the actual very first issue of the Anointed Seven, where he is giving a speech to the planet, and his speech is a lot of his rise to power was also detailed in the prequel, The Anointed Seven Genesis. But at this point, we do know that he has pretty much taken over the world, and he has been pretty much unopposed, except for the Anointed Seven. As far as the actual power that Lord Christopher possesses, well, we know he has a certain bit of an influence over demonic forces, as is seen in earlier issues. We know that he seems to have a charismatic personality, a persuasive, almost hypnotic speech pattern, and that many people are hypnotized by him, either by a supernatural force or just the sheer magnetism of his presence has never really been determined. But we have shown in different issues that he does consort with the demonic underworld. Now, there have been times where he has been opposed. There actually was a coup against him at one point, which he easily overcame. So we see he has a very high invulnerability to him, and what appears to be a pretty good resistance to high-powered weapons. He also has the ability to fly, which has been demonstrated in many different issues. At one point, he even suggested that he had power over the elements. However, the one time that he's actually confronted the Anointed Seven, or a member of the Anointed Seven, um, Seth seemed to overpower him with little effort. But they've only had one confrontation. And all this time, that's the only time that there was any confrontation between Lord Christopher and the Anointed Seven, strangely enough. And that one time was just a manifestation of the power of God being stronger than even the most powerful of demonic entities. Seth, being a Christian and in the name of Jesus, easily was able to overpower Lord Christopher in that instance. In recent issues, we've seen Lord Christopher take on a horde of metahumans. His power was on full display at that point, And after several days of battle with this horde, he actually began to weaken and was on the verge of defeat. So we saw the limits of his strength and his power. It's pretty far out there, but with enough pressure, with a strong enough force, he tires and he can even be killed. But obviously it would take quite a bit, as in past issues, as we've said, he has resisted attacks from high energy weapons. But he's not invulnerable, he's not immortal, and he can be killed. It has also been shown that Lord Christopher actually submits to a more powerful force than himself. We've seen this a couple of times in the comic books, where there is a higher, or not so necessarily a higher, but definitely more powerful entity. And that entity, it has been hinted, is actually the devil himself. And while he has shown a bit of authority over certain demonic creatures, one in particular he was not strong enough to defeat. So I suppose in that sense, supernaturally, he has limits as well as physical limits. So there you have it. In a nutshell, that is the character of Lord Christopher. Of course, if you read the comic books, you'll get a much better perspective of who he is and what he's all about. And to do that, check out the screen. You can see where you can download all of our back issues for free. And check them out, like them, tell others about it. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like it, subscribe, share. Subscribe. Thank you, and we'll talk to you again next time. Out.